Well, good morning, everybody. If you'd like to take your seats, we'll start in a moment, please. Well, good morning. It's just a tick past 9:30. Firstly, I'd like to welcome you all here to our Operations and Monitoring Committee. In particular, welcome to the members of the Rural and Lakes Community Board and our members from Te Tau, also staff and members of the public. I see we've got some guests in the gallery today, particularly from the DHB, etc. Welcome to the committee. Just some housekeeping matters. Remember, members, we are live streamed. The camera's on, the blue is showing. And also remember, and same with the guests, when you get to the desk when you're presenting, please press the grey button. I can cut you off at any time if you say anything outlandish, so it hasn't happened yet, but there is that opportunity. But just before we start, I thought it appropriate, and I know Her Worship the Mayor will send a message to the family, but a young guy who served 2 terms on our youth council, young Rotorua Kepa Jr., passed away in Perth 2 days ago, and I just felt it appropriate that we acknowledge his passing, and I'm sure Your Worship will pass on council's condolences to the family. I'd like to call for any apologies, please. We've got one from Councillor Donaldson. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Moved, Councillor Gould. Seconded, Mr. Martin. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. I'd like now to ask, are there any declarations of interest that members wish to declare? Yes, Mr. Potawa.
Just like to declare an interest in the library presentation as a member of Ngā Mahi Ngā Toi.
What's Ngā Mahi or Toi's involvement?
That's the Māori Consultation Advisory Group.
Okay, thank you. In that instance, Mr. Pasani Tuli, you can partake in the discussion. If there's a vote, you just you abstain from voting. Okay, thank you. Because your knowledge in that, obviously you've got knowledge at a level that could be useful to in making a decision. Thank you very much. Any items of declared items? Okay, thank you. I'd now like to call for any items of urgent business. I can't believe it. There isn't any. Thank you. Right, the first presentation we've got today is under the auspices of John Paul Gaston, our Group Manager of Strategy and Partnership. If you'd like to introduce your guests and the people who are visiting us today, JP, that would be appreciated, and welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, just probably the first person to introduce is Bryce, and Bryce Murray is the chair of Ngā Mahi Ngā Toi that Potawa has referenced there, and that's the advisory group that's been supporting us on making sure that we get the right sort of cultural representation into the development of the library as a project. So I'm just trying to get the remote to work for me. So also in attendance, and there's an apology from Ron Dunham, who's unfortunately not able to attend today, but we've got Nick Saville-Wood, Chief Operating Officer, in attendance, also Gary Lees, Director of Nursing, and Bridget Wilson, who is the change manager around the DHB's transition on this project.
Welcome to you all.
Yeah. So councillors, we've just got this presentation broken down into a number of specific parts. As this is an update, we are keeping it at a fairly high level, but there is a significant amount of detail around each of these different aspects that we'd like to bring back to you when it's convenient, and part of that will be involved in that walkthrough at lunchtime today for you, but we'll also have a number of other bits of information that we'd like to bring back to further updates for you. So councillors, probably the first bit there is, so I'll be handing over to Bryce just to take through the cultural narrative and how that's been incorporated into the designs. Jane will talk a bit more about the design of the library itself and some of the layouts. I'll also then be talking about some of the additional items that we're seeking external funding for. So this is outside the core aspects of the project. And then Portia will take you through some information around the Jean Batten Park redevelopment and also the proposals around the redevelopment of Hope Upper Street. And then finally I'll just cover it off with where are we up to on the project, the budgets and the next steps. So councillors, just our here and now, obviously this project's been a long time in Genesis, and if you recall back a couple of years, we highlighted to you some of the issues around needing to put in place a new library strategy, Library of the Future, and a plan for that as we see changes coming through in the way people interact with libraries and the plans for those. But also we talked about our asset and the condition of the library asset, which includes the building. So we've highlighted those issues around some of the strengthening work that was required to bring it up to standards, and there were some minor adjustments that needed to be done, but also things like the leaks in the roof and the problems we were having on that top floor, which were part of the reason why we said that this is a good opportunity for us to consider redeveloping the building. And obviously we got into those conversations then with the DHB, and they were looking at how they manage and improve services for children and young people. Their disparate health services, the multi-locations, the trips to the hill, and some of their problems with people not presenting and the moving around of what could be or should be a seamless set of services actually into a whole bunch of different locations and different service areas. So really what we've got here is a fantastic project where we've sort of said, well, there's a great opportunity to co-locate, normalise some of those health services, and also bring together a sort of more of a wellness and a well-being perspective into education, children's services, but also those health services coming through. And then what does that do for a children's precinct or an area where we can focus on the children and wellness? So really we've got that whakatauki there that sort of guides some of the decision making we've taken into this project and into the steering group discussions. And the other part of it, I keep talking about the DHB link, but there's also a significant amount of partnerships out with existing stakeholder groups, iwi, and obviously even things like the Friends of the Library. So a large number of stakeholders and partners involved in this project. So we end up with our vision, and it's the warm and inviting facility. And as far as the library is concerned, it's a safe, innovative and expansive library space to imagine, read and learn. So that's really the vision that's come forward through this process around what we're trying to achieve with this library redevelopment. And for the Children's Health Hub, amalgamation of services into one easy to use facility for children and their whānau to enjoy, and it's a coordinated and efficient manner. And really for us too, this is really opening the door on a much wider set of partnership opportunities with the community and with other agencies to provide better and more effective services. So councillors, I'll just hand across now to Bryce just to take us through the next few slides.
Kia ora mai tātou. So the area I'm looking at, what were the beginning points? So first of all, it's an opportunity. I guess JP talked about, I guess, the need for the redevelopment of the library facilities, but it is an opportunity to bring together not only the library services but health services as well. And JP pointed out many of the reasons why that is definitely important. So with that in mind, part of the design and thoughts behind the design was an opportunity to create something that is iconic and a showpiece as well, given that the precinct where it's located is actually one of the main points, entry points into Rotorua. So it's an opportunity to have showcase the unique identity, but also reflect some of the values within our community. So within Ngā Mahi Ngā Toi, so Ngā Mahi Ngā Toi being a group come together to provide advice, particularly around the design, but also some of the underpinning narratives So members of the group indicated there, from iwi, Ngāti Whakauē, and also members from Council, Library and DHB. We've also co-opted from time to time artistic expertise such as Carl Johnston and even Marcus Bickerbosch as well, so an insight into community art capability. So, reflected in the tukutuku, which is also on the wall of the council building here, are some of the elements. So, on the right-hand side, the stairway pattern showing growth, advancement, but also the pursuit of well-being, pursuit of knowledge. And so that sits comfortably with health services, but also library services. And these tukutuku designs are taken from Tamate Kapua, the main meeting house of Te Arawa, down in Ohinemutu. But also some of those elements incorporated, I guess, the deeper meanings behind them that can be incorporated throughout this building. Let me know if I'm going too quickly. So, the bringing together of health and library services, and this took a while for us to sort of come together, but basically we drew upon a number of elements, one being the aka, the vine. And the vine speaks to the traversing of Tāne and of Tāwhaki, who ascended to the heavens looking for enlightenment, for well-being, what we refer to the kits of knowledge, the ngā kite o te mātauranga. So the aka being that journey, pathway, and the mauri being the life force, the essence. So if we're talking about a combination of their pursuit, overcoming difficulties as well, but the end goals being to strengthen, support and enhance well-being, but also understanding as well. And so that's coming together, and we see it as a facility where we're pursuing the excellence in advancing well-being and understanding. So within those main themes, there are aspects of discovery, finding things out. So from a health perspective, you know, what is happening there, you know, and it's a journey, I guess, but also being located within the library, it's an environment that is inviting to whānau, and so hopefully that will decrease the amount of no-shows, which has been quite a significant issue in terms of health services. So discovery, enlightenment, we've talked about enlightenment, developing understanding, and collaborative strength. So we, each and every one of us, no doubt, I'm sure, want to get on board and support the development of our community in all aspects. And so we took it from a well-being, a total, holistic approach, and how community can be involved alongside with council, the DHB, iwi, and other members of the community as well. So within that collaborative strength, I guess those goals that we are seeking can be achieved. So for example, discovery, and I'll use the example of Ihinga, the tūpuna grandson of Tamate Kapua, captain of the Te Arawa Waka, who was influential in discovering many places in and around not only the Rotorua district, the naming of Rotorua district, but many places of sites, places of significance throughout the district as well. And so similarly, people who go to the library are looking to find things out. So that sense of exploration, finding things out, discovery is all part and parcel of going to the library, but also engaging with health services. And so here are some representative pictures of how parts of the facility could be. So enlightenment not only in terms of switching people on to the benefits of health services, but also library services, and a place that's warm, vibrant, alive, but also reflects, I guess, some of the important values that we as a community Rotorua hold dear. And so enlightenment also reflected in the kōrero of Tāwhaki. Tāwhaki, one of our tūpuna who was looking for those sources of wisdom and understanding, enlightenment and continual growth. In collaborative strength, and we've used a couple of examples here based on the tukutuku design, but also the centre pole, the pautoko manawa, if you will. And the pautoko manawa adds strength to any building. So the example there is from the event centre. So similarly, or pillars of society, holding up and providing strength, I guess, not only to this building here, but also our community as a whole. And within the tukutuku, that weaving design that brings elements together, showing strength, but also understanding and how they can support combined well-being, and how those patterns there may be reflected in different parts of the building.
Councillors, just while Jane, I suppose, pulls up a chair as well to join us, you already see some of those sort of the stories, the designs, the patterns starting to come through in images we're using. So that's become a central theme through the layout and the design that you'll see eventually in the library. And we've now got a few artist pictures of how the design is actually coming together. So we've specifically got the layouts and the designs intended, so you're actually going to see renders of what is proposed as the final build of the building. So I'll just hand over to Jane just to take us through some of those design elements.
Kia ora koutou. Just the first two slides that we have here are of the exterior of the building. Which one? Is that one? The other one. Sorry. This is the view from Rotorua Street, so with the bus shelters, and beyond it the park and the library building with its nice new coat of paint. And then from the other end, from Haupapa Street, the entrance being in the middle, accessible from the park. So it's a nice wide open space with vision through into the library through the windows. This is what you would see when you walked through the door, and we wanted it to be more than just the library and the DHB operating in a building. We actually wanted to have some kind of shared space so that the service is kind of meshed together, if you like. And so when somebody comes into the building, they'll be greeted by a volunteer or a member of the staff, and they will be directed to one part of the library or into the DHB for their appointments. So there's no sort of this is us and this is them, this is our building. It's a collective space. And then another view looking down, and you'll recognise the stairs that have always been part of the building. This is looking through to the end of that ground floor. So plenty of action, plenty of things happening, and just a nice, warm, welcoming space.
I think just trying to also emphasise a couple of changes there too. So we have quite a significant story that goes behind the layout and the design of each floor. As I say, we haven't been able to go into it too much today as part of the update, but we will come back to you with a lot more information about the colours being used and some of those design threads through each of the floors of the library. But probably a couple of key elements that you'll see when you go across for the walk around this afternoon or early this afternoon is things like, if you recall, those the air ducting pipes were quite low. They were almost at the level of the banisters, I suppose, on that mezzanine. So as you looked out from the mezzanine floor, what you would have seen at last year when the library was open was actually almost the top of the pipes. So one of the changes that has occurred in the space is really to have lifted those pipes for air circulation up closer to the real height of the ceiling there, which is a double space area. So it has opened it up and increased the light that will be coming through there. There's a number of changes on that mezzanine floor with glass balustrades there, and also picking up on some of those key patterns across the front of the glass as well, but certainly to improve the amount of light going into that mezzanine area. You also see a number of bits of wood accenting there. Look, we're retrofitting a building. There's only so much you can do, but we certainly wanted to bring into the building some wood features, and so you're starting to see that in different locations as well, both on all of the floors. So that's sort of, but also highlighting that modern library change of a much more open space. We keep talking about living rooms and spaces where you can sort of sit down and talk, sit with books, and find your separate spaces, and also the significant increase in technology that will be coming into the library as a redevelopment as well. So I just wonder if Portia could just join us next for the next piece. So this next piece really, and we haven't spent too much time in the past.
JP, just don't walk away, Mr. Murray. I'm sure there's going to be some questions.
Yeah.
And same with you, Jane, if you'd like to stay up the front. Thank you.
Good morning. So what we've been working on in Jean Batten Square is, of course, with the demolition of Community House, we had that hold fix there, but we've been working on the design to suit the building interior and the philosophy of the building as well. So you can see on the right-hand side there, the Rotorua Street is coming down here, so you can see Rotorua Street down here. And the bus shelters there. The intensity of the design increases as you go across, decreases as you go across to Hope Upper Street. So what we've got outside the library is a play space type area for children to enjoy, and it's based all around the whole philosophies of the interior design as well, with the discovery, the enlightenment, and the collaborative strength. So what you can see there is some of the play features. We see trampolines that are set down into the ground, surrounded by soft material, so it's safe. And also what you see here is a prism play feature, which is based all around that whole enlightenment philosophy. The prism of light, which is a play feature, but also at night or when it's not being used, it still is a feature into itself. It gives the park a sense of identity and a tall feature that people can draw their eye to. So you can see the park is divided up into all sorts of little spaces which can be used for different reasons. This is looking back from the library up on the top floor. Looking down to Rotorua Street along here. So that's just a different angle. The piping system which is coming from the prism is reflective of geothermal type pipes, so it gives us a real sense of what we are about in Rotorua. So these are some of the closer shots of what it looks like. So the first one with the trampolines, the children on the trampolines, but also you can see pipes which they're talking to each other across the space. Also seating, lots of seating for parents and whānau to sit around while their children are playing as well. So this is Hope Upper Street, the design that we've been working on. Of course, we're bringing a lot more people into the space than there was there before. So while the library was very well frequented by a lot of people, by bringing the DHB in, they have 60 staff alone, let alone all of the people that are coming to visit for the DHB services. But also when you upgrade a library, you increase the number of people that are coming in as well. So Hope Upper Street, we're looking to really make sure it's safe and ensure that there's enough parking for people to come and visit the space as well. So you'll see the centre parking has been removed on Hope Upper Street, which was causing a lot of issues with people backing out where they can't see, backing out where children are at a much lower height that they can't see them behind them. So the road here is a little bit wider because that gives a little bit more space for people bringing prams out the back and wheelchairs out the back of the cars. The car parks are a little bit wider as well, so they've got a little bit more space. Across the street in Haupapa Street, you can see coming from the library is a big double space here, which is similar to what I've explained in City Focus. It's that shared space. They pop up onto it. It's a more cobbled or a different type of treatment, so that it's very obvious that this is not a space which cars are the priority. This is for the people to get across. So cars will obviously slow down and be a lot slower in this space. As you come into the precinct as well from Fenton Street, there'll be a very clear distinguish that you are entering into a different zone, into a different space. Yeah. We're also going to be looking and reviewing the speeds of this street as well. Car parking on the side adjacent to the library and Gembatan Square will be for parents with children and for disabled as well, to come and make sure that they can park and get into the facility. The landscaping treatments have been increased as well, so you can see along the street it's very obvious that you've come into a very special zone here. So that's me.
And councillors, probably the only other comment I would make just on the plans as you've seen them here too, and it relates to that reducing of activity as you go further from Arawa through to Haupapa Street. Again, it's part of that, making it quieter and smoother for people to come in to the library. But obviously we've also been cognizant of the redevelopment of the eyesight, which is also going on at the moment as well, with the intention obviously at that Haupapa Street end of the eyesight is where the cafe area is likely to be in that redevelopment, and they'll be able to spill out onto the reserve here as well to use that area adjoining it. So it's the quieter end of the reserve, of the park, and certainly the one that'll be most attractive for that cafe area to spill out onto as well. So councillors, the last sort of piece of the presentation we wanted to do was just to sort of highlight, so that's the plans at the moment, so the redevelopment is proceeding extremely well, but we've in thinking about the future of the library and what else could be done within this space, we've identified a number of projects where really we want to go above and beyond, and that's really where we're going out to external funders and sponsors to say, well, here's some really special things, the icing on the cake that we're interested in putting into this project. And so we've identified about 5 elements that we're seeking external funding for as well. So these won't happen unless we receive that external funding, but for a lot of the funders, they certainly see the wow factor that's identified within these additional elements to really lift the total development. So what we're talking about there is some interactive video walls and that additional technology that we can bring into the space. Makerspace is some of the information that you have around sort of special educational areas or development areas for people to do other types of projects, whether, at a very low level, that's where your children have the Lego space, but we've seen makerspaces in other areas. It's often where people come along to do the workshops on fixing radios or doing other things. So it's quite a versatile education space with a number of different opportunities you can undertake there for both children and adult learning and development there as well. And interactive Fenton agreements, something that's absolutely important to our city as a founding document, and something that we should be celebrating and providing a lot more information on. So really wanting to include that within our library and within this development as a chance to really showcase that as something that's so important to our city. And then of course some of the other sort of things as far as technology are concerned, spaces around recording studios, the sound spaces. So there's a whole bunch of additional technology opportunities that we would like to sort of see considered, but only if we can find funding for it. So that's what we're going out to funders to look at this stage. And the last one too is just looking for some support and some funding around this very interactive playground that we talked about within the Jean Banton Park. So just looking from sponsorship around that as well. So those are the sort of the key additional elements outside the project that we're focusing on. So we haven't built into the main building or the main development these elements yet. They are entirely dependent on us getting external funding to support them. And at this stage, you know, we are getting a lot of good interest through that. So as far as budgets are concerned, councillors, if you recall, the project's got to, it was agreed last year that we would go to a $12.3 million project. 8.3 was the council element of it, so that's our strengthening, the redevelopment of the top floor or rebuilding of the top floor, as well as the library itself. Now within the area that the DHB would be leasing, they would put $4 million into the project to renovate and develop that part of the building. So that gives us our 12.3. So at this stage, councillors, we are on budget and slightly ahead of the project timetable. So that's where we're at the moment. The park and the road, we've shown you the concepts there, which are now being taken forward into the detailed designs, and then they'll be fully costed. At this stage, we're planning on using an assigned existing budgets that are existing in the roads, so minor safety improvements and roading budgets. Sport and recreation, they've identified some amounts, and we've included some additional 200,000 within the annual plan to undertake the work redeveloping Jean Banton Park. Portia described the hole that we currently have, which has been used as sort of the depot site where Community House used to be, and obviously the apportionment or application of the inner city revitalisation money to this project as well for this coming year. So that's where the funding will come from for the park and road redevelopment over this next 6 months. So the additional elements, I've talked about those. So we've got a series of funding applications which are being distributed over the next month or so. So we've already got contacts with a couple of the main funders. But so far we've actually had 3 grants confirmed from 1 commercial sponsor and 2 funding groups. To a total of 200,000. So we're not in a position really to announce that. We're really leaving it for them to decide when it's appropriate for them to announce their grants to us, but they've said it was okay to aggregate the sums up. So we've got $200,000 so far towards some of those sponsored elements that you've seen shown there. So we're quite positive that we will get the majority of that funding so we can undertake those additional elements as well. So as I say, at this stage we're ahead of schedule, and so we're still looking to have an opening towards the end of November or early December. So that sort of concludes the presentation, and obviously we've got a number of people here who can answer more specific questions if there are any.
Before you, just before you conclude, JP, I just wondered if gentleman from the DHB which wanted to make a comment about your involvement and the integration of the services. Nick, have you got anything? You come to the front desk and make any comment. I think it's important in a real partnership that we both have a say.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. Yes, we see this as a really great initiative going forward in partnership. Health is not just the DHB's responsibility. It's something that's totally interagency, and we see this as a practical example of the way forward and building our health services. For the health services themselves and the consolidation, I think the access is going to be extremely good in that site, and we've worked very, very well with the team at the council, and it's been very positive. Thank you very much.
Whilst we're thinking of any questions, I'll ask a couple of questions. So if you'd like to come back up to the table, Jane. Firstly, members, we have a site visit. We're going to adjourn the meeting at dead on about 10 to 12, so we've got 10 minutes to get over to the library. At 12, a site visit till 12. We're going to have lunch at 12, and then we've got a site visit at 12:30, hosted by the team. Just one of the questions I've got, JP, and to Mr. Murray. Firstly is, where is the PO going to go? I didn't see it illustrated. And secondly, the materials for some of the innovative designs and innovative fittings, I hope that they are all being sourced locally or made locally.
So I'll talk about the pool. So in a central location. No, but it's a representation of where it could be located.
And I'm probably just going a bit further, and Jane might want to just elaborate on this still further as well. Obviously, because we're retrofitting a former, the building is the building, and it is spread across several levels. So one of the things that we identified quite early on in the discussions about the design of and renovation of the building was that access up through the building. So historically, we've had an elevator at either end. And so apart from the staircase and the sort of the visual cue to go up to the mezzanine, for a lot of people, they didn't know how to get up through the rest of the building. So it's always been a bit of a barrier. So you can see here in this image here, so where you come through the maho, through the main entrance, the po should be quite close in line with your sight lines. And next to that is, you can see in this picture, to the left there, some doors which will be clipping open a lot of the time, which actually take you through to a new elevator that's been put in the building. So a third elevator, so there's that direct circulation up through the centre of the building. So for those coming in who know where they're going and to which floor they're going, will be able to come straight in, walk straight across, a very short walk and straight up through the elevator if they're going to level 1 or level 2. So that's part of that circulation improvement in the library.
Answer my question, are the materials, the designs, the light fittings, all those things, hopefully they're going to be sourced locally?
Yes.
Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we've got 60 DHB staff in there, how many library staff? Where are they all going to park?
Very good question.
It's like any development in the city, that does increase the parking pressure in the immediate vicinity if everyone chooses to park within that immediate vicinity. And obviously we have on-street parking of limited time duration and some longer stay car parking across the road in Hope Upper Street. One of the things that Bridget's been working on, so Bridget Wilson is the change manager for this project, and so one of the things that Bridget's been working with Portia on is just making sure we've got that information for the staff who are looking to be relocated here about the walk distance. So they will still be able to access the car parking on Hospital Hill for the DHB staff if they so choose, and so part of that information that's been passed on to their staff is how long a walk is it from where you park currently on the hill to the new offices that you may be occupying here in the library. Equally, we've also been providing information as to where current council staff park over towards Government Gardens and things like that. So we're making sure that that information is available. There's locker rooms that are being provided in the staff area on the top floor and some showers, so there's certainly also be the encouragement around there is other ways of getting into the work. The buses are immediately outside the facility, and there certainly will be bike parking spaces and showering and changing spaces as well. So we're trying to make sure there's plenty of options available like anyone else who operates in the city.
Councillor Kumar.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, JP, Portia, Bryce, Jane, and Nick for your presentation. My concern is because where the current library, the temporary one is, there's a lot of young youth and young people that congregate there, and it's more like a meeting place, and they do come on their bikes and all, and they're riding around. Now, with so much space, freedom, and a new environment, are we going to allow bikes to be bicycles with green space around the city area as well to be ridden around these parks? And my main concern, I think, which will probably be the sentiment of my fellow councillors as well, is this whole park outside around going to be smoke-free or not? we've got a health issue, we've got children, we've got families. And are we going to make it very comfortable for people who are tired to be sleeping in those areas?
I'll
Thank you.
pick off a few of those. Smoke-free, definitely. So we currently have smoke-free facilities at bus stops, at the eyesight, at the library, and we had extended it into the park environment. And the DHB is extremely supportive of that approach for us working in that space as well. So it will be a smoke-free area. There will be bike parking facilities, and I think with bike parking facilities means there will be people on bikes hopefully moving around and circulating in the space, but we have a significant size to this park and the park redevelopment, and from the plans we've shown you, we've also made sure that the different walking paths or shared paths that will come out of this are wide and provide plenty of space for people to almost share with care as they go through this kind of area. I think also, and someone might just want to confirm whether I'm correct or not, but Te Ara Ahi, the National Cycleway, starts at the eyesight currently, so it is a centre or a starting point for cycling within the city anyway as well. And I'm trying to remember, the last question was, will we attract other behaviours? Look, we have those challenges of providing attractive facilities for people to enjoy during their lunch hour or outside the library or during the day. Seating is seating, and we've done the SIPTED work around the lighting plans, so that's been identified for sort of the after hours impacts. But really it's a case of just saying, look, we're creating a lovely environment that everyone will probably want to enjoy.
Loud classical music during the day and sprinklers at night, that'll solve that problem, no problem. Councillor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your report today. With your slide 06 with the car parking, are you making any mention for people with disabilities? Because a number of people in wheelchairs do drive in cars and they need the extra space to get out of their vehicle to get to the library. And also, have you allowed for people with camper vans? You know, because a number of Rotorua people do own camper vans and they are a little bit longer than cars and a little bit wider. And my third question is, may I recommend that you aim for an opening of the 25th of November for the Library Health Hub, because the Fenton's Agreement was signed on the 25th of November 1880.
Bit of history thrown in there, JP.
Yeah, and actually Councillor Gould has identified the date we're currently proposing as our opening date, which is the 25th of November.
Regarding the disabled and
yes,
the camper vans.
So the disabled car parking, you can see all along here, adjacent to where you will get out and go directly to the library, are looking to be either disabled car parks or parks for like parental type car parks. They are all a little bit wider along here than those ones over here. This is the concept plan, but it's working on the detailed design at the moment. So something that the DHB, and we've been working with users as well of the DHB services, something that the users identified was that they can't come down here and drop their children off and then go and park. They need to park and stay there and then go to their appointment and come back out, and to be able to get into those car parks and into their vehicles easily. So those car parks along there have been identified, and as the need arises, we can easily add more disabled car parks along there as well. If it's very obvious we need more, we can easily change them along there. In terms of the camper vans, yes, the camper vans are a little bit longer in the city and they do stick out a lot more. If they were, at the moment we do not have any provisions in this space for camper van parking. As they come along here, and if they were to park in here, the road is a little bit wider along here anyway, so it would accommodate if they were to park in here. But at this moment, it's a space for our local public, but also our visitors across at the eyesight, which are mostly coming by bus. So.
Thank you, Portia. Councillor Tapsell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you everyone that has presented today and those who have come in support. This is truly inspirational, and I mean, I just want to thank you all because you only ever get what you have the courage to ask for. And in my opinion, a library and a hospital are the most important assets that a community can have. A library in terms of providing that knowledge and the history of our past stories, and also the hospital because the health hub, because I believe that, you know, it's the health of our children that really determines the success of a city and how well we are doing. So thank you for this presentation. There are a few questions that came up that just popped up into my mind, and that was, is there going to be a change in the stock policy for the books that the library hold? I know that you've got a lot of changes with the advancement in technology, but I would just like to know whether you will still maintain the same amount of books. Secondly, will there be any restructure to our staff with these changes? And lastly, is there an opportunity for art contribution from children in our schools, such like what we have at the Aquatic Centre and also the airport? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tapsell, for your questions. In terms of the stock, we always review how the stock, what we buy, according to what the community needs. So there's no intention to change it dramatically, but it will change as the community changes and the requests and the need for the different types of things come in. So that really is just determined by the policies that we operate under currently. And in terms of restructure of staff, we've already gone through a sort of a restructure in that we've realigned ourselves into the way that we're operating, ready for going into this new environment, so that there is no restructure plan. Art?
Art. The art questions.
In terms of the art, some of the public art that we're looking at the moment, so as you're arriving down Hope Upper Street and Aroa Street, because the entrance fronts onto Jean Batten Square, you can't see the actual entrance to it. So as you're driving down the street and you're thinking, where am I supposed to be? So what we're looking at is some public art on both ends of the buildings. So something that's very visual, something that signals this is who we are, this is our space, this is where you're supposed to be. So something you'll see coming out in the next couple of weeks is a call for artists publicly for art contributions to the end there. We've also got art on the maho as well, on the entranceway, so that's something that's going to be going out through Ngā Mahinga Toi as well. Internally, when we include the children in the artwork, something we've been talking about at the moment is bringing some children in to do some of the painting of the walls. So some of the painting is colour behind perforated panels, but that paint is just, you know, it's paint that needs to be done, but the children can come in and have a bit of fun and be part of that process as well. So that's something else that we're looking at. But yeah, there's all sorts of ways that we can include them. We're just not quite at that stage yet.
Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. JP, can you change the slide to the one in the middle? No, further outside, the outside area, please. Yeah, that one will do. There was a couple like that. Yeah. Just a couple of quick questions, but first of all, very pleased with this presentation. What everyone has given us is really sort of actually quite exciting. So the question I have is, kia koe e te whanaunga Bryce, he pātai kia koe. I noticed that there's an area where the Fenton agreement is going to be on display, which I think is fabulous. We've all heard about it, but I've never seen it. And so I take it it's here somewhere, or it's going to be come on board. Well, it's the original. That's the first question. Is it the original Fenton agreement that's going to be on display?
Mr. Chair, I actually don't think we'll be putting the original out. I wouldn't actually know where it is. I've just noticed, I saw that the treaty had been moved in Wellington, and there was hundreds of thousands of dollars in air-conditioned vans and special groups of people to move it. So I think what we're talking about here is an interactive display that would enable people to discover more about the Fenton Agreement, and if you think of some of the better museum or exhibits these days where you have the chance to self-discover down different routes, being able to click on the agreement to see who signed it and information about that, it's sort of that interactive type displays is what we're intending, rather than putting on physical display the original.
No, and I've been very pleased at the involvement of the Lōpu that you've had. They're good people that are on there, and so it leads into the next question, which is the marae, and I'm so pleased I hear JP and Portia already talking of the maho and things like that. And with the November-December opening, could I assume that we're going to have an opening, an outdoor one, almost like a marae type setting, where Jane and Portia can do the karanga to everybody that goes along there, but I take it's going to be used for a wonderful thing like the opening or very special occasions that could be held there. Ideal.
Yes. But just thinking about the whole precinct as well, which is, I guess, one of the actual areas that was reserves within the Fenton Agreement, kōpana whakarua, but thinking about the eyesight itself, so that's the entryway into the precinct. The Jean Batten Park being the actual plaza or the marae open area, coming to the main building, the big building, whare nui, with your veranda maho. So you see those connections, I guess, from a traditional marae, but sort of incorporating those elements within our city. So yes, quite a central, pivotal area.
Thank you. Your worship, the Mayor.
Yes, thank you for the presentation as a team. It's fantastic to see a team come together like this, and to also see the recognition of the cultural elements. And Bryce, you must hear your mother speaking. She was a dental therapist that looked after children, and she'd be very proud of you today for your component in here. So it's just lovely. I go back to the petition that, change was a big thing for our community here. Innovation's one thing, change is another, and hard to get used to. But you seem to have ticked off every element that the petitioners came to us about with their concerns. And thank you for that. The one that I wasn't sure about was, I hope we've got manoeuvrability around whatever sort of storage of books, and that we can get to the books on the lower shelves. That was an issue. And the other bit that I don't see, and I hope it's there, is a water fountain. I see the water, a drinking water, because that's another message for children about drinking water. The other aspect that I'm getting a lot of feedback on now, and I think that Councillor Kumar mentioned it, but I'm confident more people will be in the space, and when there's more people, you're not really loitering, you're there enjoying a space, and that's a different element. But the Multicultural Council here, Jane, are having monthly lunches at the library. Is there a space for that sort of activity? Because they're loving it, and it's growing quite fast. So how do we adapt and adopt for the wider community?
One of the things that we've been really conscious of in putting the layout and the design of the building together is that we need to create areas, spaces for groups like the Multicultural to come. And so there are a number of meeting rooms available for smaller groups, but the idea is to have the shelving as flexible as possible. So at the moment we have some of our shelving on wheels, and we want to have more of our shelving on wheels so that we can open out spaces when the need arises. there's nothing worse than having a library that's crammed full of books and shelves and nothing else. Nobody actually finds anything and nobody really enjoys their visit. So we're trying to create more of an experience rather than just a place to go and pick up a book. Libraries are just so much more these days.
I also thank you with 2 presentations recently to the library managers of New Zealand about innovation and design of a new learning and exploring space, which we're seeing here today, and also the DHB. I spoke to the wider DHB about this as an innovation and partnership, and that has jolted a lot of thinking in the DHB sector, which I think is great about where to next, what could we do. But it's a fantastic initiative, and I know we're all going to be very proud of it when it opens.
We've got a couple more questioners, but I've got a couple of questions to you, JP. From an ongoing operational point of view, I mean, the costs of running this operation are going to be huge, and they'll impact our budgets. If you could put up the plan, because what I'm interested in is the integration between the eyesight and the library, because the library did derive quite a bit of income from the cafe that was at the front, and it was very, very popular, not only with library users, but people who weren't library users or visiting the library. So where the integration through to the eyesight has got the opportunity to create a cafe. We aren't specifically having a cafe within the library, are we? And interesting, Jane, your comments about community groups being able to come in and use the facilities. But one of the overriding things is, where are all the community groups going to go who were in community house? Where's their home?
I suppose a couple of points there, and I'll probably start operationally. There should be no more additional cost to operating the library than the current budget. We will have a lease arrangement with the DHB that we have identified and is already in place as far as the contract's concerned. We've got an understanding about the outgoings for the building costs, of which the DHB will be taking on a proportion. So within the operating budget, and as you've heard Jane say, she's started to look at the structure and the organisation of her current staff and complement to manage the library. And she did occupy this library space previously, so there has only been a small change in the overall footprint of library space, so that management across the facility is still going to be the same. So that's one sort of part of it. The second part was, you're right, we used to have the O'Kerry store cafe on the corner. That's now gone, and that space is going to be quite a significant meeting room, which will have external entry and egress after hours, so even when the building is closed, people will be able to get access into that meeting space. As far as the cafe is concerned, one of the things that we've spoken with the eyesight management about with their expressions of interest process was to say obviously they're focusing on what they need to operate the eyesight, but we've made sure to include some information in there about saying, well, actually please put down that maybe if we end up with meetings and people hiring out space or using space within the library, they may have an opportunity to cater in to the library. And independently of that, and just being a coffee person myself, there's a real joy in smelling freshly brewed coffee or having a coffee whilst in a library. So Jane has a coffee cart arrangement that's going to be set up within the library herself. So that there will be coffee and sort of muffins and things available directly into the library, just not as a whole cafe at this stage. So there will be beverages and a small amount of food available in the library, and if not, certainly across the park in the eyesight.
There is an integration, that's good. Yeah. The other final question I have for you, JP, is the 8.3 million that's budgeted for us. Does that include the establishment of the precinct in terms of the sport and recreation type elements within the Jean Batten area, and any funding, will that come off the 8.2 or is that additional to?
Councillors, and I think we've tried to be, we were quite clear when we did that very first preliminary estimates, which moved the price up significantly over the whole library redevelopment, that we were focusing on this is the cost of the library building. So everything I've shown you within that 8.3 or 12.3 in total was for the library building itself. So that includes the maho and the verandas that will extend out on both sides of that maho back out to both Haupapa Street and Arawa Street to get that entrance, that covered entrance way into the building. So that is the building project for 12.3 million. What I identified in that budget was that we've only had a concept, and it's taken a while to get the concept developed through for the park, but probably the other two team members who are hugely important to this project who weren't able to, or we had it added to this list, was Rob Kethley and Stavros, because it's really the importance of what that means for an inner city park development and the road development, as far as getting that messaging around the importance of that children's health precinct, the slowing of traffic, the making it really easy for everyone to access the library and the Children's Health Hub, and obviously the inner city revitalisation funding as well. So that was the piece that we hadn't identified when we first agreed the project redevelopment. So that's the bit that everyone's now identified to say, look, we can take it from minor safety improvements within the roading budgets, we've got parks budgets we can allocate, we've got inner city revitalisation funding. The additional bit, which was about 200,000, which we added into the annual plan, gives us enough, we believe, to successfully complete the project. We're waiting for costings from contractors around the park development, but we're also looking for that additional sponsorship around potentially the playground elements, which is quite a large piece of that total redevelopment cost.
And thank you for that. And finally, we are on target and on budget. Councillor Kent. Finally, Councillor Hunt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just seeing that rather larger tree on the left-hand side reminded me there was a very good suggestion that we should actually have a living Christmas tree within the Jean Batten Park. This would be a very good opportunity. Has any consideration to that and provision for lighting for it been considered?
Yeah.
We've got the various lighting projects around the various trees in the city. So there's the ongoing potential for lighting trees, regardless of a Christmas opportunity. There is the chance to light trees, and obviously we've got a number down Arawa Street and into Kurau Park. So actually it would be logical for us to include a permanently lit tree within this park as well. I suppose as far as a Christmas tree is concerned, I know there's a lot of natives in this space. Would have to go back and just check what kind of trees we've got in there, and whether there's anything Christmas tree-ish, or whether that might have to be an additional consideration.
Good thought, Councillor Hunt.
Thank you.
Then, Mr. Martin.
Thank you. Jane, I know that the school holiday and other programs have been fully subscribed in your temporary location. What sort of difference will the new space provide you, and will there be an opportunity to use the quieter end of the green space in the park for programs outside? Because I know you have been fit to, you've had to turn people away.
That's one of the difficulties we're facing in our temporary accommodation, is that there isn't enough space, and we've had to limit the numbers that are taking part in the children's programs. So with the space that we've got in this new building, and there's different spaces, so we can hold different things at different times. So we did, when we were occupying that building before, have upwards of 100 attending children's holiday programs. Now we're kind of limited to maybe 30 at the most. So we're anticipating that the numbers will grow with the space. But one of the beauties of having that park development next to the library is that we can take some of our well, not necessarily holiday programs, it could be Rhyme and Rumpus or Baby Bop out into the park on a nice day, which will be kind of nice for people wandering around in that area too. So using both spaces would be ideal for us.
One more small question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, what I have seen what's been presented today, I've got to congratulate the team. I think every town and every city wishes for something like this. But I'll be straight with you people. The annual capital spend, we're asking for $4.7 million. That's what's in this now. Mr. Chairman, I have some real doubts about the extent of the expenditure. I also believe that there should be, if the extent of the expenditure is going out, it should be over a period and a time frame. Your council is in debt right at this moment, and reality's got to come back to be sensible about what we can do and can't do within our centre. I bring you to remember that the library needs ratepayer support to be sufficient and to run. It cannot stand on its own feet. So I'm not knocking this, I'm not putting it down, but what I'm saying from the rural people, there's 8,000 of us out there who are hurting in certain areas that we haven't got. This window that I'm seeing at the moment, we cannot afford at this particular financial year. Next financial years, perhaps we can have a look at it. You might be able to sell some assets, like we've been possibly doing. So, Mr. Chairman, I support it in principle, but I can't support it in the annual plan that's going to come forward in the next few weeks with submissions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Do you want someone up here to talk about the financials? Because the costings have already been spread over 2 years. Thomas, do you want to talk about that? Or?
I'm just struggling a little bit as to whether this is a discussion about, your question or statement is about this financial year or the proposed annual plan. I'm assuming it's about the proposed annual plan with regards to what's being proposed to be spent next year to finish this project off. And I guess the only question I would have is that if the councillors felt that that was not affordable, then I guess we're in a position whereby the project has started and needs to be finished, and I'm not sure it can just be stopped partway through and waited for a number of years to complete the actual critical component, which would be to get the DHB tenant in there. So I'm just struggling a little bit there, Mr. Martin, with regards to what you are suggesting and how that could even be accommodated.
Just before Mr. Martin responds, Thomas, can you just explain to everyone here, the funding isn't just for next financial year. This financial year we've already committed to a substantial amount, and rather than fund it all in one financial year, we spread it over 2 financial years.
That's correct. It is being spread over 2 financial years. And I guess what wasn't mentioned before was that, yes, the proposed annual plan does have 4.7 million in there for next year, of which 4 million is coming from the DHB. So if you didn't want to proceed with that next year, then you would potentially only be deferring a $700,000 cost to the ratepayers.
Don't want to debate. Do you have a further question, Mr. Martin?
Mr. Chairman, I've made my point.
Thank you.
And I don't want to elaborate any further.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just a little question. I can't see it anywhere there, and it is a community asset people love, is the Jean Batten herself. Where does she go? Because that was a community-funded initiative, and lots of people love it, and we named the park after her. Has she got a good, prominent place there?
At the moment in Jean Batten Square there is a plaque,
yes,
which will be relocated within
Great.
the space and given a bit more of a central prominent space.
Yeah.
But we are looking at other ways in which she can be, the story can be told a little bit more, so in interpretive panels and that kind of thing. So, yeah.
That's really pleasing to hear, because the wing sculpture, that's the one we're talking about, that needs a prominent place. So that just shows you that the European culture and the iwi culture and the Te Arawa culture is brought together. It's just not one-sided one way or the other. I think it's a wonderful concept. JP, do you have a final comment?
I would just say, and we're really conscious that Jean Batten is another modern and important discoverer for us in that set of messaging we're trying to talk about for the city and for that space as well.
Just in final comment, Bryce, can you take back to Mahanga Toi our thanks? Also, Mr. Satherwaite to the DHB to you and your team. I know you've been working many years on this concept, and to Portia and JP, and particularly Jane, who's had to put up with the relocation. This is going to be an iconic situation for Rotorua. All of us around this table who were at the council table when we made I think, a really important decision to go ahead with this in the face of some controversy. I think you have taken it with both hands, with your lead, JP, Mr. Satterthwaite over in the DHB, brought together, and as Her Worship said, we should celebrate this partnership that is setting a trend throughout New Zealand now, and taking these things forward. So, to you, thank you for your presentation. Someone like to move that a vote of thanks be accorded the presenters this morning. Thank you, Mr. Wari. Seconded, Councillor Maxwell. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you very much. Is the minutes of the Operation and Monitoring Committee on page 7 for the 6th of April. Would someone like to move that they're a fair representation of that meeting? Councillor Gould, Mr. Waru. Are there any matters anyone wants to raise from those minutes? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Would like now to move to page 13, which is the financial performance for the 9 months ended the 31st of March, in the hands of Mr. Collet. Where is, oh, it disappeared. Oh, okay. So on pages 13, 14 and 15 are the performance up to the end of the 31st of March 2017, and Mr. Collet has a small presentation to explain where we're at. Welcome, Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, councillors and board members. Unfortunately, mine is not going to be as interesting and as exciting as the presentation you've just had. I do apologise, it is going to be a little bit repetitive from the previous months, and that's just because the financial result is progressing as per expectations. So in saying that, unfortunately, we are in line with where we were forecasting to be with regards to the impact that the museum will have on our finances. We've now fallen behind a further $363,000 during the month to be nearly $1 million behind budget. Obviously that's against a forecast for the end of the year of 1.3 million. With regards to revenues, now close to 400,000 behind budget overall, and saying that the majority of that relates to the museum closure. As you can understand, we're now at the tail end of the busy period for the museum, whereby it was effectively getting 250 to 300,000 per month historically in entry fees, and as we go into the winter period that drops obviously significant as well. So the lost revenue going forward drops compared to the year to date so far. In saying that, other revenues have been well ahead of target and continue to be, so consenting and parking and regulatory all continue to exceed expectations and budgets there. With particular consenting is going extremely well and is just a reflection of the demand from the community at the moment. Expenditure overall over budget as well. Again, it's continued the trend from the previous months. 220,000 decrease or change for the month. Again, impacted by the closure of the museum and the waste transition costs, but also we've incurred additional costs with regard to redundancies to the museum, but as well as additional costs as a result of the increased pressure, particularly in the consenting and regulatory functions. So increased revenue, but also an increased cost as well. But in saying that, the revenues in those areas are exceeding the additional costs. So that extra revenue is helping to soften the impact of the museum closure. Capital expenditure, so it's actually progressing extremely well. So if many of you will recall, last year we 23 million. The year before that we did 19 million, and the year before that I think was 17 million year to date for the full year. So to be nearly 25 million for the 9 months is really well. So. We've gone from probably being 2 million ahead of budget now in the spend to now falling on budget. So we're closing in obviously on ending the year to where we're forecasting to be. So there's roughly now about $9 million still to be spent to get the end of year forecast that we were saying, and half of that will be incurred with regards to the further work on the library building and the eyesight, and the other half will relate to general water network renewals, parks renewals, and those types of things. So all in all, though, we are still anticipating to the end of the year 4.4 million over budget, and that's obviously relating to the acquisition of the museum storage, which wasn't budgeted, as well as the bringing forward of the funding for the health hub, which relates to obviously the timing of the total cost of that project. Property and asset disposals, so still 1.1 million of property sold, as well as an additional 800,000 from the carbon credits, so we have achieved 1.9 million in revenue in total. We've got a further number of contracts, properties under contract. Unfortunately, at the time of the report and the presentation when it was put together, those two were still under contract. One has now fallen over through to due diligence, and that was just relating to the cost of the proposed development, I think, of what that individual was looking to do. And saying that, so while it's unfortunate that one won't go ahead, we have just placed 2 sections in the Hamarana area with regards to residential lifestyle sections that council had actually approved for sale many years ago, and we've put those on the market, and hopefully, well, we think that they'll sell very well and will help fill that gap that other property has left. So overall, we still anticipate that we'll get the revenues that we're forecasting in that area, but we'll now change from, we anticipated one property will deliver a chunk of that, we're now targeting a couple of others as a result. So borrowing is up on the start of the year. Now, don't be alarmed, as I've said to you in previous years, it is at this time of the year with regards to April / early May where it does peak, and it peaks obviously as a result that a big chunk of our capital works program has been done, as I've suggested before, and we're funding the majority of that obviously through rates of revenue, and our final rates instalment is due on the 20th of this month, so therefore that debt, while it's up temporarily, will come back down to where we expect as per the start of the year, and we are forecasting no overall increase for the year. So it is just a timing increase at this stage. So just a reminder, the forecast overall is, from an operating perspective, to be 1.3 million short of a shortfall due to the museum closure. In effect, the majority of that is for the foregone revenue. Capital expenditure to be 4.4 million over due to the library health hub, 3 million timing, plus the acquisition of the museum storage. Asset disposals will hopefully contribute a further 3 million, and as a result we anticipate no new borrowings, but our cash on hand will reduce to 3 million. So that's about a $4 to $5 million reduction on our cash on hand as a result. So in saying that, any questions?
Yeah, questions through the chair, Your Worship. Slide, yep.
Consenting, and you talked about having to bring more staff on because of the increased activity there. That's going to be a trended increase, isn't it? We can see it and we can feel it. How do we manage that in the long term?
So you're correct there, Your Worship, and that's one of the things that we've addressed in the proposed annual plan for next year. So we've also reflected that increase in revenue going forward, but we've taken a conservative view, and we've increased the resourcing of that department as well to reflect that requirement. So that is now built into the annual plan, and obviously that'll flow through to the long-term plan should these levels, and hopefully they do, of levels of demand continue. Yep.
Thanks, Chair. Thomas, sorry, on page 14, can you just explain to me the balance of 215k relating to the accrued expenditure for contractors, please?
That just relates to some costs from Infracore relating to the accrual of that expenditure, and we're just working through the timing and the landing of that. So, what Infracore has been doing is we've been, as the new board has come on board and has looked at the services that are being provided, we've been working towards getting really strict SLAs and agreements with regards to what we're buying for each of our services. And as we go through those and recost those, there's been some ups and downs and changes across the services. That 215,000 just relates to an accrual of bringing some expenditure in relating to that up and down. And so it just relates to the fact that in the previous month we'd reflected one of the ones coming down, and we just needed to reflect the other one going up, and it is in line with expectation. It all nets off to zero, and yeah, it just explains a bit of the movement this month. That's all.
Issue, just so I'm following it, it's a timing issue, Thomas.
Correct. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Thomas. I also had a question, like Ms. Chadwick raised about the consenting. Because we've brought on more, I'm just getting a bit uneasy on whether we're actually able to provide the service for our community, because I know we're going to talk about it later, but in the non-financial, we're extremely behind on the land use and subdivision as well. So is that consenting only coming from one area? Are we struggling in the financials with the other area, for example? And secondly, just on page 15, I've also got a little bit of nervousness around the cash reserves that we have. With the original target of 5 million, it's quite significantly under. So, you know, and obviously cash reserves for any unexpected costs that we have. So can you reassure us that being significantly under target will still allow us to have enough cash reserves shall we need it in the near future, short term? Thank you.
So the first question with regards to the revenue from consenting, my understanding is that it is across the board. With regards to the performance measures, it might be the Chief Executive or someone else is able to answer that, but I understand some of those is because we've had quite complex consents coming in, and they do go over time, and generally when they do go over time, it's an agreement when you're working with the other party. So while a performance measure says it has to be done in this time, there are other factors sometimes that mean that these can't be achieved. But revenue-wise, it does appear to be across the board. So from a consenting perspective, there's no one area that's lagging behind. With regards to the cash on hand, great question, and it's something that's we've been highlighting over the last months. That one of the concerns that I do have is that by having this result, our cash reserves are probably reducing a little bit lower than the ideal. And the ideal being is about $4 million is where we expect to be. So we're forecasting to be about $1 million less than that. And obviously, while that is the forecast, we continue to actively work to make sure that we end better than that. So the goal is obviously not to reduce by that much. So in saying that, it's not ideal, but it is workable. So.
Councillor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Thomas, for your report. I noticed on one of your slides you put no increase of borrowings, yet we're spending an extra 4.4 million. Also look at page 15 on number 3, last paragraph. The council's cash reserves are forecast to reduce by 5.5 million to 2.9 million. Does that mean with the new financial year starting 1 July we're going to have problems? Will we have to increase the borrowings? And the other question is, why don't you mention what the council debt is on your reporting?
So I guess with regards to part of that question is, as per my answer to Councillor Tapsell with regards to that. So yes, the forecast is not to borrow, and to achieve that, our cash reserves will be utilised. And as we've highlighted before, ideally we'd like to hold about $4 million of cash on hand at the end of the year. And saying that, prior to probably 2015, we generally held $1 million of cash on hand, or even less, at the end of the year. So it is workable, but in saying that, it's not ideal. So, and that is something that we will cope with and work through to resolve, like we have previously, and it is just part of what we need to do.
Second question was, why didn't you show the council debt in your reporting? You know, the debt might be 160 million, might be 155 million, might be 165 million. People picking up this report have got no idea at all.
Oh, look, we can include something in that. I guess the intention of the report is to show the movement, and the key thing is that we anticipate ending the year with no increase. So quite happy to state, therefore, what we anticipate that end of year position to be in total in the future.
However, Thomas, my observation is that you're giving us an update on the impact of any risks or threats to the current budget that we've got. Are there any others that between now and 31 June, for example, we had a weather bomb 2 or 3 weeks ago. Apparently there's another one on its way, and I just wondered whether we'd had any impact on our budgets, or you can forecast any major impact on where we're heading.
Correct, Chair, that we did face a weather bomb, and that it has led to damage that needs to be repaired and fixed. So some of that we've incorporated already, and will just be included with regards to ongoing business as usual. The forecast hasn't taken into any account what that may look like, and we're still working through understanding what that looks like and what the quantum of it is. I think talking to Stavros just the other day, and he can go into a bit more detail of that at the time of the ops report. Probably a fair chunk of that, though, will obviously push through into the next financial year as well, so not all of it will be incurred in this financial year, and as well as also access to NZTA funding to pay for those sorts of things as well. So it's not as easy as me saying it's going to be X. It's quite a complicated process. It's a process to work through what it is, when it will be done, and how much will be funded by NZTA, and what will be left for us to fund. And so we're just working through that.
So there will be an impact of some sort?
Yeah, the question is, will it be this year or next year? And if it is, how much will it be?
Yeah,
and we're just working through that. Correct.
Okay. All right. Councillor Gould, your question. Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is for the Chief Executive. We've heard that we've got a over-expenditure or an over-budget forecast of 1.295 million, and we've heard the reasons why, primarily being the museum. My question for the Chief Executive is, what does he plan to do about it to bring this council's operating expenditure back on track? Surely there must be operating costs that can be deferred that could assist to bring us back to a net balance situation.
So the finance team has certainly worked across the organisation, and they're continuing to do so, to look at actually what savings can be accrued. And in fact, every month for the last few months, there has been discussions across the organisation as to how to minimise costs. What we're currently working on, though, is an expectation, which I understand that you have of us, is to not actually start cutting actual services. And I think where we are at the moment is at a stage of saying to you that without reducing actual services or delivery, we don't see that it's actually possible to do further reductions in cost expenditure. This is a very unusual situation, and I think the realism of trying to absorb this level of cost saving into the organisation without actually having some consequences to it, it's not going to be achievable. And so therefore the forecasts that you are seeing are based on an assumption that we're asking staff to maintain current service delivery levels.
Thank you for that response. My secondary question, which is probably better for Thomas, is why are we budgeting to be 300,000 over on staff expenditure for the year when we've had 20 odd staff laid off the museum?
So as explained previously, Councillor, so when we lay staff off, there are fortunately for them, redundancy costs, and so therefore we still, while we may not incur the full year's cost of those staff, we do still incur a fair portion of it, and they were laid off halfway through the year. The remainder of it relates to, as I said, we're carrying additional staff due to pressures in the consenting and regulatory area, and that forecast reflects the fact that we are carrying more staff as a result. And remember that these staff are funded by the additional revenues that are being generated. So there is no negative impact on council's finances overall as a result of having those additional staff.
Your Worship, the Mayor.
Thomas, my question might be better put next at the next month's report, but I'm very aware with the adverse weather event that staff were deployed to assist, and that is the right thing for any council to do. For neighbouring councils, we know there's no cost recovery for those staff when they go and give their time over at a neighbouring council that needs their services. Next month, I wonder if because we're already realising with the museum and Edgecombe that this isn't business as usual. This isn't normal monthly reporting. But it would be valuable to know in the next month's report how you've managed to keep the level of service that we wanted, as well as deploy as many staff as I'm aware that went over to assist. So it's probably too hard to give to you today, but I think we tend to look at this as a business as usual, and it's been anything but business as usual, even in the last 2 weeks. That probably will be flowed through next month, but it would be good for councillors to get that picture of how many staff. I don't think many of them realise it. Chief Exec might want to make a comment.
And look, I think the reality is that the current events that we've just managed through has put an immense pressure into the organisation. And it really refers also back to Councillor Kent's query about can you realistically respond to the level of demand that we have at the moment, but at the same time actually reduce their cost base to a significant level? And the answer is no. I think the work that has gone on has really had a number of consequences, and we can see that fundamentally some items, such as City Focus being an example, has not been able to actually go ahead at the time we would have thought it would have been, because the contractors have been redeployed in other work that was needed as a result of this weather event. So that sort of observation you will find has happened across our organisation as well, that some activities have had to be rescheduled but will be undertaken in the next little while, but nevertheless it has resulted in some rescheduling. I'm also aware that some of our staff, particularly senior staff, have over the last period of time worked some quite excessive hours. You've seen people's car parks being filled well after 5 and well before 8 o'clock in the morning. And the reason for that sort of time is actually trying to maintain a business as usual situation, but also addressing some of these other issues. So we really have sort of responded to this, in my view, on the basis of, one, the goodwill and the dedication of our staff to both provide the services locally but also provide assistance more broadly in the region. Two, by rescheduling events and activities in a way where we can actually push some things out to fit others in. Three, by reducing some real costs in the organisation, and the reforecasting approach that I talked about before, perhaps I can't state strongly enough, how serious that has been taken, and quite honestly, some of the costs in our organisation have actually been significantly reduced as the result of that reforecasting. We merely haven't just said, gosh, this is costing more money, and so therefore it's going to go in the bottom line. There has been a lot of dedicated work gone into saying, how can we reduce the fundamental cost of this organisation to work to as much as possible towards our bottom line without impacting on current service delivery levels. That's been a very real and active response. My belief is, and the CFO can provide a much more accurate estimate on this, is that we've reported to you on a regular basis the sort of results that we see that we're going to achieve. But I must say that some of our draft forecasts have looked nothing like these numbers. And it has actually been the finance team going back to the divisions and saying, look, this is just not acceptable. What can we do to minimise some of these outcomes? And it's being played out in the organisation on a regular basis that's produced the sort of bottom line that you're seeing today. So my view is that you've got a very resilient organisation today, a much different organisation than what you had 3 to 4 years ago. But it's not resilient to the level that it can keep on giving and giving and giving without some stretch on the bottom line. And that's what you're seeing being forecasted to you today.
I'm on the Civil Defence Emergency Management team, and I am enormously proud of the way Rotorua Lakes Council has responded to assist and our staff. Amazing capacity. They've gone way out of their day-to-day work program, and it's wonderful when you go over to meetings in Whakatane to hear the value of the support that your staff, Jeff, have given to something quite extraordinary. And we'd all do it if there was an event here too, but we have the capacity. That's the issue that I don't think as colleagues we realise, that we have the capacity, and we've kept that resilience in our own council organisation to be able to respond. So thank you for that wider service that has been provided.
In the past, Your Worship, with councils that haven't been close to us, like the Manawatu who faced disasters, the council was put its hand in its pocket and sent an amount of money, and I thought that would be appropriate for Edgecombe, but you came across pretty quickly to me and said, we are donating in terms of kind, which has a higher value to them rather than $30,000 or whatever, and we'll get that quantity, the amount that we have put forward quantified so that you can see what it actually has cost the ratepayers of Rotorua. That has not stopped people, though, on a personal capacity, donating to the Mayoral Relief Fund, which has been amazing. So, Mr. Wari, question?
Kia ora, Mr. Chair, tēnā tata. Kia ora, Thomas. Just wanted to speak about the museum, and I'll be pretty straight up about it. It's the insurance. I know a couple of meetings back we've already spoken about that. You gave I think it was you, yes, gave an explanation about the current situation there, where you're waiting for engineers to do their thing, and then after that we'll know what we could recover from insurance. I was just wondering, obviously we didn't have an insurance that covered loss of income. Is there something, would you kind of be looking at that in the future, maybe for other, not just for the museum, but for other assets that the council have?
So, thanks for the question. We do have insurance for loss of income, but it too has a extremely high deductible, because obviously to insure at the level, because of our scope of breadth of activity, to insure at a level that you and I would insure our home and contents is quite frankly unaffordable for the community. So just like the building, we need to understand what the damage was, the extent, and what it would cost to repair, and if that repair bill is higher than the excess or deductible, then the insurance would kick in. The same as with our loss of income. So we know we are losing income, but that loss of income to date is still not in excess of the deductible. The moment that gets to the deductible, then we can be in a position whereby the policy will kick in and it will pay out. Just to be very clear, those two policies have the same deductible. So it is $5 million in total for both. So we need to therefore incur either income lost of $5 million, which is roughly 2 years' worth, and the policy only covers 2 years of lost income, or we have to incur a repair cost of damage plus a combined loss of income in excess of $5 million, at which point those policies are expected to be paid out. But just like every insurance company, there'll be a robust debate as they try to not pay. But that's typical of any, I guess, insurance arrangement. So yes, they are insured. I guess the question that I've posed to our insurance brokers, who are Aon, worldwide, they are a significant player in this market, was have we got that level of deductibility right on our income protection cover? And I guess the question is, in a case of where our insurance is tailored for a significant natural disaster, so if we were hit by an earthquake and the building was significantly damaged and collapsed and so forth, these policies without a doubt would kick in pretty much instantly. We're facing an event that, while it's of significance that the building has had to close, visually it looks fine and everything, we've just got to go through this process and determine what all these are before they kick in and before we can obviously do that. So, but it is a valid question with regards to should our loss of income deductible be a bit lower, and that's a debate that we're currently having with a view of possibly reducing that going forward, but the reduction of that will obviously mean an increase in the premium, and we've just got to weigh up as to whether that increase in premium is worth it. So, yep.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Mr. Waru, just Mr. Williams would like to make a comment.
Look, if I can just add to what Thomas is saying, I think this is an area that there has been some misunderstanding quite broadly in the community. The level of insurance of this organisation is the same as any other council in this country. So we don't take a different approach from any other council. We do, however, take a much different approach from what any of us would as an individual homeowner. The difference being is that this organisation has something like $1 billion worth of assets to insure. Us as homeowners are in a much different situation. So when we look at the level and the disparity of our assets, we have pipes, we have roads, we have museums, we have buildings, we have a diverse portfolio. And to ensure them to the level of full replacement as we may our own household would just bring in unrealistic costs into the organisation that fundamentally couldn't be put to the ratepayer as reasonable. So what we do is that we look at taking a careful and cautious approach to insurance in a way where we look at the worst case scenario and we should ensure in a way that gives adequate coverage for those severe scenarios. And that's what we've got in place. What Thomas is saying for the museum, we've got an excess, if you like, which is quite significant, and the reason for that really is, again, mitigating the cost of the overall insurance cover for that particular asset. But what I'd like to just stress, though, is that we're part of a group scheme with other councils across the Bay of Plenty. We look at also the sort of insurance approach that Auckland Council, other big councils are taking, and fundamentally our approach is very much in alignment with them. And again, just stressing the fundamental, what we're trying to achieve is reasonable cover at an affordable level. The sort of expectation, I think, that you hear people saying, well, why isn't the museum covered so that we would be today receiving no cost? Well, fundamentally, the answer is we could never afford it.
Just in response to that, yeah, no, I understand about the replacement, the insurance and all that stuff. That's we've got so many assets, it would just push our costs right up. I was just referring really to assets like the museum, who actually make money for the council, for our community in terms of loss of income, but I'm happy with Thomas's kōrero. Kia ora.
Mr. Waru, because we've also got the aquatic centre which derives an income, and maybe those two need to be, and I think your assurances and what the CEO has said that they'll be you're reviewing those types of policies.
Yeah, look, and the other complicating factor on the insurance is because it's a heritage building, the excess or deductible is twice what it normally would be as well. So that hasn't helped. So for all our other, the majority of our other assets, it's a much lower threshold of deductible or excess on them. But the museum being heritage, it is twice as high as what, and that's just in line with the policy. Yeah.
Mr. Martin, finally, and then I'll call for a mover and a seconder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to follow on, please, what our CEO has actually said. Is there any chance of getting a report or a verbal report of how we work with other councils, like we've supplied staff? Is it a goodwill issue? Is it on an hourly basis or anything like that? I think we sort of need to know where our staff are working so we can say, well done, congratulations.
That's similar to what Her Worship was talking about from the, yeah, and that's what our community, I'd like to have that quantified as well, to say, well, the people of Rotorua contributed $100,000 in kind, or staff expertise, etc., etc. Yeah, okay. Thank you, Mr. Martin. I'd like now to call for a move that the report of the financial performance for the 9 months ended the 31st of March 2017 be received. Thank you, Councillor Tapsell. Seconded, Councillor Kawate. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Very good discussion. Now turn to page 16, which is the non-financials. And Thomas, you're going to take us through this as well? I've got a mover, Her Worship the Mayor, seconded Councillor Hunt. Now we'll discuss. Mr. Collins.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, just apologies on behalf of the organisation with regards to the inability for some blurry pictures in the agenda, so we'll make sure that doesn't occur again. No presentation. I'll take the report as read. All I will say is that there's been a very 2% shift from the previous quarter to this quarter with regards to performance measures moving from needing to attention to on track. It's probably quite pleasing where we're at with regards to the numbers of measures that have been measured that are on track, and we've still got a small portion to do in the coming months. We'll just flag to you that while we would love to end the year with 100% completion, we are aiming to get as close to that as possible. However, as you can tell, there are a number of measures that haven't been met and will not be able to be met as a result as well. And two of those, as an example, are the admissions to the museum with its closure. Clearly that won't be achieved. And the aquatic centre with regards to the closure of the learner pool while it got redid will mean that they may find it difficult as well to achieve the entrance into the aquatic centre. So that's two examples whereby certain actions have taken place which will mean we won't be able to achieve them. But overall we'll look to achieve as high a percentage as possible, and there is still a number there that while they need attention, they are still quite achievable at this stage.
I understand, Thomas, the annual survey has been commissioned at the moment, so that's why you're going to achieve zero under not measured yet, because those results haven't yet come in.
Correct, yep, and that survey is being commissioned at the moment and should be completed over the coming months. Yep.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Your worship? Geez, I nearly got away with it.
Yeah, you nearly did. It's just a question of process, and you mentioned the community survey. Isn't there a more exciting way that we could in future, and when do we do that measurement of the community's perception of council? Solga must be looking at this one, and I asked the Chief Executive if you can just outline when we get a chance to have another crack at getting a more, a better return really on targets that measure our vision 2030?
Just through the chair. So that is a discussion that's alive and well in the organisation at the moment, and is really attached to the long-term plan. The long-term plan really does set the expectations with regards to measures, and it's something that Una will be working on as we move into the long-term planning period.
Can I assure the committee that the chair and the deputy chair, during our run-through of the agenda, we robustly debated this issue to ensure that the information was current, and that there was a wide cross-section of the community participating in these surveys, i.e. the issue of gender, of age distribution, etc., because a lot of the young people whom we want to survey that Councillor Taps will raise don't have landlines, they will have cell phones. So we were assured through Una's office that that component has been put in, so we hope that the survey results will be a lot more robust, Your Worship, and I think some of the issues that we all have about make sure there is the coverage will be addressed through Una's office. Do I put that in? Yep. Okay. So it's been moved and seconded that the non-financial. Now, you all got a copy of this, didn't you?
Yeah.
This is the updated one. Mr. Waddy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kia ora anō, Thomas. Just a question referring to page 24, pensioner housing. It's great that this is happening, but given the recent press release saying that Rotorua is having this, or has the second highest homelessness rate in New Zealand, whether it's right or wrong, what's our response to that?
I assume you're referring to the vacancy days?
Yeah.
Look,
I know it's about pension and housing and all that, but
yeah, the vacancy days, I guess, does look quite high.
Thomas, just I don't want to interrupt, but Thomas's responsibility is for the financials and the non-financials. In terms of the politics of homelessness and that sort of thing, I don't know where you were going to take that,
I was only
Thomas.
going to comment on the vacancy days, Chair.
Okay, if you could, and then I'll hand it over to Her Worship, because
he
I know she's been working very hard on it.
Yeah, I won't obviously go into that. I guess with regards to the vacancy days, we have had a number of units that have been empty while they're being refurbished, and obviously that takes time, so that has contributed to it. There is quite a lengthy waiting list still on there. As soon as a unit is available, we generally bring people in, so we're not of a case where we've got empty buildings for a significant period of time where we're looking to fill them. They are turned over very quick. But in this instance, there were two in particular that were empty for a significant period while they were being refurbished.
That was why I was asking the question, just to see if there was any vacancies there, and because of the recent report release. But through you, Mr. Chair, well, to you actually, who can I ask that question to?
Your Worship, she's been dealing with the ministers and
Kia ora.
other social service providers.
And I don't think we're ready really to bring anything back yet, but I think we have to be very careful about facts. There's no factual evidence about that number at all, but any number is a concern, just any number is a concern. And we'll be bringing back, through the Chief Executive, a response for what is our role in the statement of intent that came out about transition and social housing. So that's something that the Chief Executive and I have now clarified about what the council role could be and where we can move with our council tools on both the Community Housing Trust and other agencies that the Crown is talking about. So I think it's better that that comes back later when we're very firm on that approach that, if you remember, this council agreed for Rosemary Viskovich to go and look at a social housing trust, and that's a good question later for her. But I think I'd rather wait at this stage for a report back on the way that we think as a council we could work in partnership. And that's taken, first step was to clarify what it even meant. And what is our role in there. And this is a very complex issue right through the chain from the district plan renewal opening up more land, encouraging building, transition into housing ownership, and what we do with the stock that we currently own. So it's a very complex issue. But I do just want to caution, we've got to be careful about citing that as a factual position of Rotorua, but we should also say we don't like it. We don't like the fact that this is an issue in our community and we need to get on and do something about it.
Worship, whilst you are disputing that, I mean, to find a solution to a problem, you've got to know what the problem is. And if we're not number 2 in New Zealand, and I don't accept that for 1 minute, you just have to go around some of the other provincials, I think we need, if that report that you're talking about is going to come back and say, this is the problem, these are the issues, this is how we can collaboratively, because you made a press statement stating we haven't got the financial resources, and we've seen that today, but we have a role to play with as Mr. Waru pointed out in the pension housing, and his concern was that we should be maximising the occupancy of pension housing. Thomas has explained why. I think that's acceptable, but in the wider position, that report coming back would be helpful as to where we go in the future.
If councillors remembered, we supported LifeWise Trust to set up a plan for this issue in our community, and LifeWise Trust are now going to do as well as anybody can a head count so we get a better idea, but that's going to be raw data that changes and is incredibly flexible, but that's the right agency that we work with here, and that will be part of our report back.
Your Worship, that I think people need, and I'm speaking as a member of council, the other risk that I've heard is that if we get on the money, we get on the button in terms of providing, and it gets known around the community, that we'll attract a huge influx of the homeless into Rotorua. So I hope that when you're doing your collaboration, particularly with the ministers, that this is a whole of New Zealand approach rather than just Rotorua getting its act together and then all the issues end up in our neighbourhood. So I just hope that that report is wide in scope and addresses it from a New Zealand angle, just not a Rotorua angle, because it's just not a Rotorua problem. And you acknowledge that.
We would not acknowledge at all that we can solve anything beyond trying to look at the issues in our own district and what is our role, and it should be Crown-led and us there in partnership with what is available to help us.
Yes, kia ora. Tēnā koe te manukura. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to clarify a few points. I didn't say we were the saviour of the kaupapa. All I wanted to know was what our response was, because we do have a role. Whether we like it or not, it impacts the whole community. Tuarua, I did state that whether it was true or not, the the report that's just been released, I don't believe it. However, that doesn't take away the fact that there's still a problem, and we need to address it. So that's all. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying that, Mr. Wado. I think we understood. Mr. Potawa Baiseni Tule.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kia ora, Thomas. Just a question on page 26. The percentage of business plan KPIs for the airport are achieved. 60%. 60% December, 60% March. Is our airport tanking? No, we've got, it's an international airport with very few international flights and flight reductions, but an increase in capacity. Struggling, knowing I've only been here since 2010, and in 2010, 11, 12, there was major interest in the airports, major investment in the airport, and now we're back to 60%. If this airport was my garden, I would be very worried.
So the short answer is no, it's not tanking. So financially, it's doing extremely well. So there's no issues there, and they're projecting to be well ahead of budget with regards to their financial result. I think the performance measures themselves are like us. If you do look at it, there is one there where it is 0.1 off from being achieved. So obviously they need to work quite hard to understand how they can get that satisfaction from 7.4 to 7.5, and then all of a sudden they go to 80% of their KPIs achieved. And the other one relates to passenger numbers, which is obviously they're working on constantly and reliant in a way to Air New Zealand. But no, as I said, the short answer is no, it's not tanking, and it is doing, if anything, better than it probably ever has for quite some time.
Questions? Oh, Your Worship.
One that's aspirational more, and that's why the targets on page 23 with our beloved aquatic centre. We see the number of kids doing the Learn to Swim classes at the aquatic centre and look at how the figures are increasing. But I wonder if we're putting through nearly 5,000 people through the Learn to Swim and for schools, which is great. What's the total school children population, and how many are we actually teaching how to swim of our total community? So this is just a throughput figure rather than those that are attending ECE schools. So I don't know, Rob, but I'd love us to, I like the Christchurch approach, and especially with our lakes, it'd be great if all our children would be able to learn to swim.
Mr. Pikethley, welcome.
Thank you, Chair. And through you, Stavros has just informed me that we have 15,000 school children in Rotorua. He obviously knows from a cycling perspective. So yeah, the whole Learn to Swim program is around the fact that we do deliver in-house, and that's growing, taking it from an external contracted arrangement through that we're now providing it ourselves. That's grown, but we've also received significant external funding to take it out to the schools now. So we've captured an extra 5,000 school kids, 5,000 lessons, which won't be 5,000 kids. It'll be a proportion of that, depending on how many lessons we get them.
Ultimately, have all our schools learning to swim.
Yes.
Cool.
There is a vision in the Learn to Swim program that basically has all of our kids, by the time they leave school, able to swim 200
That's
metres.
fantastic, and that's what we should have with our lakes. That's great.
Mr. Chairman,
Do you have a follow-up question?
It was just a commendation about with the weather bomb and how our city, in the first instance, kind of struggled with the flood, but then in the second instance, mobilised. And just to thank Stavros and the team.
Yeah.
Because I think if things went bad, we would have really heard about it. And in the second instance, when the whole city mobilised and we were all prepared and it kind of washed over us and didn't happen, it was nice to know that our infrastructure was there.
Yeah.
So just a
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for that. And I think Stavros should take that through to his to Infracore. They were certainly ready to go. Councillor Gould.
Chairman, with the question with the aquatic centre, I noticed in Rotorua that there's at least 2 schools with swimming pools which students won't be going through. That's Rotorua Boys High School and Owhara Primary School. And I know when I was a student of Rotorua Intermediate, we used the Rotorua Boys High School pool, so it's really difficult for the council to say 100% going through the aquatic centre, because it just you just have to take those figures into account.
For your question, Mr. Wadu, you got a question?
It's a question. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just around it might not be for Rob actually, it's around the waste management. Page 35. There's a lot of, stuff there about the waste management. I just wanted to ask, and maybe he can confirm, might be a Stavros question actually, that due to the natural disaster, the weather bomb and Edgekim and Whakatane being in strife, I've heard on the grapevine that we've taken all their waste from their area and we're currently dumping it in our dump now. Does that impact how long our dump has to stay open, or is it going to be maxed out quickly?
I think the short answer there is that that's not happening, looking at Stavros. So.
Not happening, Stavros?
Oh, okay.
Okay.
And the other one was, have we got things in place for when the Lions come to take care of our waste? Because there'll be a big Rugby ball.
Yes.
I think that's part of operations, so we'll get Stavros to comment then if you could, Stavros.
Room with those questions, kia ora.
I'm sure he's got it in place. And I see Mr. McKethley over the back laughing, and he's got everything in place too, so. Okay, Your Worship.
Question, it's probably Nevin, but I remember last time being very concerned about the inspection of licensed food premises. It's great to see that number going up, and you're now all over it, so I feel a lot happier about that. Just the high risk premises, and then another element that's come through from the community, people wanting to open up stalls in the market, which they love, saying, is there a different level of regulation for them because they feel it's just too prescriptive for them to be able to get a barrow and use the Sunday market. So that's another level of compliance that I know we should see for public safety, but have we
Your Worship, we're marching off into other areas rather than KPIs. So
well, no, these are the high risk areas.
So can we leave that for the next report? So I've got the staff in front of me who can answer that question. These are non-performance targets and measurements of those targets and whether we're going to meet them or not how we're going to meet them or what we're meeting.
So what, my question then, Mr. Chair, fair enough.
Yep.
Good point. What are we doing about the high risk premises?
The question we can ask Nevin. Thomas.
I understand there's a program in place to have them all completed by the end of the financial year. So, and with regards to those others, you'll have to ask Nevin.
Feeding the markets. Yeah.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you very much, everyone. So we'll now move on to the the operational report for March to the end of March to April on page 39. If you'd all like to turn to that. Do I have a mover and seconder the report be received? Councillor Maxwell, Councillor Tapsell. The other one was carried, wasn't it? Yep, okay. So we've got reports in the 4 sections within the report. First is Finance and Capability Report, Thomas. On page 40.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Look, take it as read. All I will say is, in confidential, I do have a small presentation with regards to the progress on the museum and how that is going. So if you wish to save any questions about that till then, that would be I can tackle it all there.
Yep, people? Okay, thank you. So we've got legal and property, project management, information services. Any questions, just raise your hands. Kaitiaki Māori? Monty? Any questions? He's in Auckland. Yes, Mr. Stanton.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Can I just ask Thomas what the rates modelling being done in relation to the annual plan is? Is it in response to submissions or comments that have been made so far, or is that something that's just tracking normally?
So the rates modelling obviously is as per the annual plan, and yes, you are probably correct in that we do look at submissions and we do try to anticipate the types of questions and so forth that will be asked, and we try to get an understanding of what the impacts will be via some modelling. So therefore we do have information that's relevant for your decision making at the suitable time.
You, to get a better understanding of the submitters' angles and points, do you make contact with them just to get clarification if required?
Oh, only if appropriate, but generally they're pretty robust submissions that we can get a pretty clear steer from.
So you can see what Monty's been doing under those 5 points. We now go to strategy and partnership groups, planning and policy. You'll see there one of the things is the water and land plan. Regarding those submissions, we made a submission to the hearing panel. I don't know who did that, but was that well received?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you recall, we had Amy give that presentation to the previous meeting, just in the confidential section about where things are up to. So Yeah, I think that's probably the. There's been no further real update at this stage.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just in terms of the spatial plan within there, we have had a request from a number of people within the lakes and the rural areas on extending that deadline for the spatial plan, mostly because they've got such a wide area to consult. So are we able to extend it and also give support for them to help gather that very large amount of consultation?
Extension has been requested. Are you aware, JP?
Yes, I am. I've been speaking to it mainly through the lakes, but I think the rural board is just as important in that discussion as well. Look, we had if you recall, we said that this round of consultation, and I'll change my word to saying discussion, because remember it was a discussion paper. We had given it approximately 2 months, so we had it looking to close formally towards the end of May. But in talking with the different community boards, and we have a key focus on geographical locations, so one of the things that we wanted to do is if there's meetings that can be arranged within May, that's great. If they're just outside of May, if it has to go into June, then I certainly don't have a problem with that. I think one of the things it just affects is how quickly we can fold that feedback back into that first draft. So we're just looking at how we can sort of do it. If we can schedule the meetings in early June, but still take a closing date as of the end of May, we can certainly accommodate those meetings into June.
Take it, JP, there's been quite a bit of interest in the spatial planning process.
Yeah, it's one of these situations where it's just gaining some momentum. You know, you're starting to come off the Rotorua 2030 refresh, so people have got that in their mind. We've moved into the annual plan process, and if you recall, that was one of the decisions why, because it is so important, that we wanted to make sure that we were going to finish the annual plan discussion and still have a longer period for the spatial plan to continue on with. So if there is that kind of request and we still need to schedule meetings, we are looking to accommodate that, so we will be doing
He's the key staff person in terms...
No, it's me.
It's you. Okay, thank you. Mr. Martin, Mr. Councillor Gould, and then your worship.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question, please. Northern rural side, do you want the rural board to organise the meeting, or do we come back through you? We can book the hall and things like that.
Look, I think there's a mixed approach. So if you, with your direct contacts into some of those residents associations or some of those groups, if you have that direct conversation you can say to them, hey, this is a good night for us, we're ready to go, then tell us. Okay. Or if you want us to make contact with them because they're waiting to hear from us to book a time and a meeting, more than happy to do that as well. So I have a suspicion in what you're describing is they will be talking to you about when it's suitable. We will come at that time to be whatever those meetings are.
We'll do the booking of the hall.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your report, JP. On page 32, road condition, you mentioned the CBD roads, the local roads around the city area. Why don't you make a report about the rural roads? Because, you know, rural roads are actually quite messy at times and dangerous for the farmers.
When we're on page 40, right through to 40. We're actually at 44 now. But if you're prepared to answer that, I mean, that's more Stavros's area.
Yeah, and can I just make a point? There's not a differentiation between
rural
urban and rural.
No.
I was just looking at, I'm presuming you're talking about road maintenance, but the actual performance measure is of local roads, local versus state highways. So our local roading network is all of our roading network. You're right, the comment only refers to the CBD, but it is about our whole local roading
network. Okay. Your worship?
Thanks for your encouragement about being able to extend the spatial plan, but my concern, and I agree from community meeting, I was with Fed Farmers the other night, and they need more time to think about these bubbles, you know, where they might go, and then putting the detail on it after the consultation. But does that hold us up for our primary objective, which is for an investment in a business case for Tēnā Road? And I'm hearing from NZTA, get your spatial planning finished so that the business case gets to us this budget year. So while we say, yes, we stretch it out, while we put, some more meat on the bones, I don't want that primary objective to get that business case off delayed at all.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Your Worship, you're absolutely right. That's one of the pressure points that we've got. So one of the things that we're doing is, the 29th was important, that we've had the discussion, we've had the initial conversation, but the team have got to be starting to work on the draft. Now, we've got a number of other studies and background information that help support that indicative business case, but certainly from NZTA they do want us to be further advanced into, let's see the hard and fast draft documentation. And I think one of the conversations I've already had with the community board is if there is an overlap of meetings into June, we actually have to get the outputs from the meetings. We can't then have a case of you've been to a meeting and now you've got another 3 weeks to lodge a submission or something like that. We're talking about your views on the day at the meeting type stuff if it has to go into June. So there is going to be more of an untidy overlap in that, but we do need to get something out through June.
Yes, Mr. Martin.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. Your Worship, what is your date that you prefer? With this? No, we need to book our halls and get our people on board. So if you've got it.
From the Chair, I think Stavros, you could have a discussion with Mr. Martin and JP after the meeting.
We need to coordinate, please.
Yeah, because I hear the message that we're getting quite clearly that we can't hold these things up because we've got Tino Road that we've got to get some action on. It just can't keep going on like it is, day in and day out. So, Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to raise the issue that several people have commented to me about the amount of advertising this council is putting in the papers, particularly with the confusion that's taking place in the public between what is a vision refresh, a spatial plan, and our other advertising. And when I actually had a look, I couldn't even see a closure date for the spatial plan, so I start to wonder what we're actually achieving by all this paper.
Actually informing people, but never mind. Anyone want to answer that? Oh, JP.
Through Mr. Chair, look, we've consciously tried to talk about, you've heard through Thomas and through Una in the way the legislation has changed and the fact that we are now required simply to be talking about what are the major differences between the LTP and the annual plan. So what was actually likely to be talked about in the community was quite narrow. So we felt that was really doing a disservice to what this council provides to our community on an annual basis about the services and what was already programmed in the LTP. So it was an important communication exercise to make sure people had a wider understanding about what was being proposed. So that was the focus of the communication we were putting through around the annual plan. So more than just what are the issues, it's the wider communication. And look, we have got several consultation processes going on or starting to overlap. So it was really important for us to make sure that we got that information and the clarity out about that. I see Jeff's moved his microphone, so I'll hand over to him to pick up as well.
Jeff's going to give an overview because I think this is a leadership issue in terms of, we get complained at because we don't consult, and now we're getting complaints that we're over consulting. I mean, where's the happy balance, Mr. CEO? You've got a hand on this.
Well, councillors, I have taken, staff have taken from you some very clear messages, and that is the importance of communication and making sure that people are informed. Secondly, transparency, and then thirdly, engagement and dialogue. Now, those factors have been very clear from our workshops that that's what you were seeking, that you were seeking to ensure that the community were understood the issues that we're talking to them about. Secondly, that they've got the opportunity to engage. And thirdly, that we're quite transparent about the sort of decisions that are being made. Unfortunately, we cannot do that without actually having a clear plan to do so, and that's what the communications division under Una's direction has actually put out there. There is a There is a number of media pieces that have gone through. There are letter drops that have gone out. There's an engagement site that has been created for dialogue. There's a submissions process. So all of these procedures, if you like, are really just responding to the clear direction that we got from you. And again, that clear direction being transparent, to inform, to engage, and to encourage dialogue. So that was something that we heard from you, and hopefully we were correct in interpreting.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. It's on page 42, right down the bottom, the collaboration Bay of Plenty, COBOP. Is there any, I'm just wanting to ask the question, do we get any real value from that COBOP? I just wondered about that. And I know that they're looking to form new clusters and to discuss the value and scope of these regional forums regionally, but I'm just wondering about COBOP itself. Thank you. Maybe somebody might like to. Thank you.
I've been waiting for someone to ask that question. Thank you, Ms. Councillor, and I'm sure Mr. JP wants to answer it.
Look, COBOP was established around the community outcomes. So when we had community outcomes in the local government legislation, and it goes back a long time now, those groups were established to have that wider discussion between the key agencies. So they have had value, and they were important at the time. I think over time there's been a gradual diminishing of the value, and probably because there is a lot of other good conversations taking place in other forums and between particular groups, and obviously our library and health hub partnership with the DHB is a prime example. We don't need to come together through COBOP to have those conversations. So I think it is really opportune that they've having a hard look at the effectiveness of those groupings and the meetings that are involved, and I haven't seen the outcome of it, but I'm certainly hoping it will be a lot less and a lot better focused.
Personally, I think it's a waste of money. Mr. Bosani Tuli?
Kia ora. Am I able to go through just the question on the strategy portfolio and economic growth? Page 42. Just to make a comment about the My Backyard Garden under the Rotorua Local Food Network. I saw that 86 home gardens were created. Amazing response by the community, and I think there might be a further rollout. So just to let the councillors know, that's quite a successful program. But the one I wanted to point out was on the next page, 43, under digital, in the hope to make Rotorua the digital hub of Aotearoa. Last year we hosted Nethui. They brought 100 geeks, so practitioners and experts and leaders in their digital field to our council. Sorry, I speak on behalf of the nerd herd. So, and just to highlight, next week Tech Week is being celebrated here in Rotorua. So I've got a couple of flyers, but just to point out at the bottom, just a correction. Tech Entrepreneur Investor Networking Evening. That will be Super IT and Tech Cafe are holding a virtual reality workshop, 5:30 at the Third Place on May the 10th. So there's no date there. I just wanted to clarify that date. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, and you can book through Rotorua X online for that. Yeah. And I'll hand these out later.
One thing on the electric vehicle project, are we considering putting in a charging station for Teslas? Because they are launching the new S. There's already some in the country, and the Tesla 3's due to come out next year.
Might have to refer this across to Stavros. I hadn't been aware that there was a difference in the connections for the electric charging on this one. I thought there was a standard.
Some superchargers for the Teslas, and I think if we're going to get and predominantly our visitors are from Auckland, many of those are already arriving in the country. So having a supercharged charging unit here makes us a very attractive stop.
All right, I'll feed that back into the group to make sure that's discussed.
And Councillor Hunt. With that, we'll adjourn for lunch and we'll resume. Jane, you're still here. How long is it going to take us to go through our work through? Would 1:15? Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you very much.